55. I'm Joe Sanak, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice that you absolutely love. We want both sides of that. We want you to thrive, to do well. But we also want you to love it. We want you to have fun with it. We want you to just engage differently with the world because of this podcast, because of the people you get to meet, both within the clinical world and also people that are from outside of it. We've had some really interesting sessions recently. Yesterday, or actually wasn't yesterday, last week, the end of last week was how you think about productivity is completely wrong. We talked with Matt Ragland about that. Also, we're on week 11 of me building the Great Lakes online counseling, that group practice that I'm starting from scratch. We also talked about why your view of addiction is wrong. We talked about all sorts of things like changing our beliefs and how to stand out in marketing. So, a lot of really interesting episodes that you may have missed in the last few weeks. Make sure you go back and check out any of those that sound interesting to you. We do 3 to 4 of these a week. So, a lot of interesting guests, but also just things that hopefully fill in the gaps of what you didn't learn in graduate school. I'm so excited to have my guest today. Today, I have with me Brianna Henderson. Now, Brianna has been a longtime member of our communities. We've got to see her grow in so many different ways. But Brianna is a licensed professional counselor and registered play therapist in Frisco, Texas. She's also a certified child-centered play therapist and child-parent relationship therapist. She owns Lily Pad Child and Adolescent Counseling, which exclusively specializes in child-centered play therapy for kids and child-parent relationship therapy for parents, including Brianna. LilyPad now has a team of 5 play therapists dedicated to supporting children and their families. Brianna, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Man, it has been so fun to watch you grow LilyPad and to now have joined the practice of the practice team as a consultant. But take me back to, when did you realize you wanted to be a play therapist?
Well, I always knew I wanted to work with kids in some way or another. And whenever I found the counseling world when my undergrad years, I don't know, I learned about this and then I was like, that's it. That's what I'm gonna do. Um, back then I didn't know exactly it was like play therapy and all the ins and outs. I just knew I wanted to help kids with their mental health. I think like everybody has some sort of experience as children with family, different people in your lives where you've seen people impacted by so many different factors. And so it just became a passion of mine very early on.
Yeah, I know when I was a kid after my grandpa died, I had an art therapist who incorporated a lot of play also. And at that time, it was, as a kid, so much easier to communicate via play and via art than it was like using my words. What's the unique importance of play in childhood, specifically in accessing what's going on in a kiddo's brain?
Yeah, well, it's just like you said, it's so much easier to communicate through play and expressive activities. It is actually like universally studied and found that children communicate and process through play. Even, if you imagine whenever you have like the little kid pretending to be on the phone and talking just like mom, or all of the things you see them, do pretend play whenever they're young. And it can be a bad experience, a positive experience, a neutral one, um, but they repeat things over and over through play because that's how they're processing. As adults, we may think things through, we may talk to another person whenever we're just processing our day, wanting to talk about it. But they don't have that same cognitive factor. They very much live in their hearts, not in their heads. A lot of everything they do is feelings based. And, they may be intelligent and articulate and everything like that. It doesn't mean that they're not, but they don't have the same ability to think cognitively in the way that we do. That part of their brain is not as developed. And so everything that they're doing is more through feeling, what feels good, what feels bad. It's obviously a lot more complex than that, but that's the, little summary.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of, I talk about this all the time on here, that I'm part of improv here in Northern Michigan. and we were just doing a scene. There was these two people doing a scene last Tuesday, and one lady, she was smoking, talking to her best friend, saying, "You're the only person I got. My wife doesn't even love me," and like kind of all this. And then the other person said, I'm dying of lung cancer again. And it became a very serious scene, but also it became like kind of a funny scene. But at the end of this whole scene of this kind of back and forth between these best friends, that one was dying and one was smoking, and they're dying of lung cancer, our coach talked about how in improv, you can just explore kind of the darker side of humanity. You can explore the lightness of humanity. And I think, when you're in a good improv scene, you're just reacting rather than overthinking. And I think maybe in play, and you're the expert in this area, that sometimes that's true with kids too, where in play they're just reacting, they're making the toys talk to each other, they're doing whatever they're doing, and they're not processing like, what does the adult expect out of me? What am I supposed to do in this situation? That they're able to let down that guard to get to just that kind of natural reactive state, similar to like almost being in an improv scene.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that lines up very well. Because whenever we like ask kids questions, I mean, I'm sure you have experienced this too. How was your day at school? I don't know. Or what did you do at school today? I don't know. Um, like, oh, how was this thing? I don't know. A lot of the times whenever we're doing that, asking kids these questions, it's because we're asking them to come up to our level and cognitively go, okay, think back what happened. It's a very cognitive process versus if you're just chilling, kinda like how at night, whenever kids all of a sudden remember everything that they wanna talk about, they're not there's no pressure, and they're just feeling things come up naturally, and that's when they can really express themselves. That's when they can go into details, about, whatever did happen that day or anything because they're not having to super cognitively process it. Instead, it's just more of, like you said, reacting what naturally flows.
Now, there's play therapy techniques and there's being a registered play therapist. When should a therapist really refer out to someone that's registered, had their whole education around it, versus just incorporating it into the therapy that they're doing?
Well, so with that, becoming a registered play therapist is awesome. Yes, I love it. And you don't have to be one to have still had all the same experience as one, if that makes sense. And so it's not necessarily like if you're not registered, it's one level. If you are, it's another. Generally, yeah, you could look at it like that, but there's plenty of super experienced, amazing play therapists who just decided not to become registered. So I wanted to throw that out there. It doesn't mean that they're not as great. Uh, but overall, it's one of those things where I would say, and I think a lot would say, that you never want to just incorporate play into therapy if you are not a trained play therapist. That's not, oh yeah, I'm going to add in this thing or, try it out. Like you need to be fully trained in it. And whether that's because you got it in school or because you've gone through extra trainings and stuff, kind of like EMDR therapy. You're not just going to like throw in some of that, right? You need to be very trained and know what you're doing. And that would be the same thing here. And so, in general, I'd say if you're referred a child, honestly, then if you don't know play therapy, then referring out. There's a lot of different modalities of play therapy. We personally are here at the practice. We do child-centered play therapy. Some have other theories, like there's Adlerian play, there's CBT play. Obviously, I think that child-centered is the absolute best, but there's different ways you can be trained in it, but overall, yes, you need to be a play therapist who has been trained and really, has honed the art of it before, trying to see kids.
Yeah, I love that. So, like, I mean, you went from starting your practice to having five clinicians in like a year and a half or so. Is that right? The timeline?
Yeah, just about.
Okay. First of all, that's insane. Well done. What do for those that are starting a play therapy practice, what are some things that it would be really helpful for them to know? And maybe that's like specific phases or order of operations that you did. Um, and maybe what's unique about a play therapy office versus just a typical therapy office. Like take us through that journey of starting a practice, growing it into a group, having it be a successful group that's getting clients. What should play therapists know?
Yeah, well, bigger picture things, just how to start a practice, right? Go back and listen to all of Joe's other podcasts to get the outline. But then whenever we're talking about a play therapy practice, a practice that's for children, and we also see adolescents, kind of in there. But whenever you're doing that, it is a lot different than opening a practice that just sees adults or couples or whatever the other things are. Because if you're looking at it like the children are the clients and then the parents are the customers. And so whenever looking at it like that, you're having to figure out how to really mold what you're doing to be great for both sides, right? We want parents to be happy. We want parents to, be interested in what we're doing while also it being a fun kid place. As you can see, I'm sitting in my play therapy room right now. You can see some of the stuff behind me. And so that is definitely something that can be difficult to balance because you want parents to be able to trust you. You want parents to, see you as a professional, but also you want them to know that you're warm. But if you go too far, right, and make everything like a McDonald's playground, then you don't look professional anymore. With parents maybe like, I don't know about this, right, because sometimes it's already hard to convince parents that play therapy is a legit therapy. They're like, you just play with my kid. How does that make sense, right? And so there's a lot of explaining of all that to do. Um, but in general, sorry, I'm backing up a little bit. Things that I would say are important to focus on would be stuff like your website, for instance. You want to have a professional website, right? But you also want to show that you're kid friendly, right? If you have a website that is, I don't know, very muted, well, muted tones are fine, but very, there's an ocean in the background and there's, um, adults on it, or it's just like, I say boring, I just mean adult like. If it's something like that, then parents get on it and they're like, okay, but like, do you actually see kids or is this really your specialty or, what is this? Versus if you have it with like all these bright colors and Comic Sans font everywhere and crazy photos, right? Then that also doesn't look professional. And so, but shout out to Tom at Session Sites. He was able to make, in my opinion, the perfect website. It has color. It has, it's very kid friendly. It's fun, and it's super professional. Whenever parents get on there and see it, they go, "Okay, this place is all about kids. Like they are obviously specialized. This is obviously what they do." And it looks very respectable and professional at the same time. The same goes whenever it comes to like what our office looks like, the lobby, the parent consult rooms, right? We really try to cater to the parents in the sense that we have comfortable seating. There's, flowers and art and, plants, and it looks very professional. But then also at the same time, there's like a really cool wooden train set and there's a little kid table with different trinkets inside of it. Um, we have like little bean bags and a mini couch, all these things that, can still look nice in there, but it is kid friendly. Having the refreshments, having all the different things. For refreshments, I've learned I now do flavored sparkling water and flavored regular water along with water. Parents don't appreciate whenever you have sodas or anything like that in there to fight with their kids about having. So things like that, you want to be considerate of. Having candy sitting out in the waiting room, probably not always the best. I mean, that one's back and forth though, because I've done that before. But sometimes parents, for whatever reason, don't want their small children having the sugar. Um, Let me think. In general, marketing, just as a whole can be very different because you're not marketing to your client, right? You're not marketing to the kid that you're going to be in the room with. And so, marketing, and then once you get the client, also keeping that relationship is a whole different ball game because you're in there with the child and they leave and they're happy and they're like, yeah, we had so much fun. We played, we did this, and they'll talk about what they did. And the parents are like, so they just went in there and played, right? And so much of it has to do with a lot of communication in your marketing materials. I mean, such as the website or whenever you're trying to like get the clients coming in. and then having that consistent communication throughout, so that way they know, like, okay, we still know kind of what's going on. Um, because in a regular practice, your client is meeting you every time, right? You're building that relationship. And so it can be difficult because you're not building the relationship with the parents as much as you are with the child. And so for retention purposes, that's a really important thing to look at too.
Yeah, I think how much do you tell the parents about what you're working on for the clinical side, but then also for the just keeping them updated so they see the value in therapy side?
Yeah. Well, we discuss confidentiality a lot with parents because it's hard. This also, I will say, disclaimer, depends on the state you're in, basically how much rights kids have. We're in Texas, and parents are the go-to say all until they're 18. They have to sign consents, they have to do everything until they're 18 years old. So I know that this can be different in other states. So this is based on Texas. Um, but at the same time, we do talk to parents that technically, yeah, they have the right. They could go make me give them all the notes, right? I'll fight them on it. I'll just be like, can I give you a treatment summary and all the things? But they technically have those rights. But we talk about it from the start that while like I'm gonna give them information, we want to keep this confidential for the child because they're not going to trust me if they think that I'm just repeating everything they do and say. Because sometimes they do something, I don't know, maybe they get like really aggressive with a bot bag or um, pretend like they're killing the baby. I don't know. It could be something where like they would never want their parents to know that they did that, or they would be embarrassed or whatever the thing was. Um, and so whenever we do talk to parents, we give them more of an overarching, like, okay, I'm seeing a lot of power and control themes. This makes a lot of sense with what you had said in the intake. Um, I'm noticing that they respond really well to this type of limit setting. Here's what I do. You can probably try it at home, that type of stuff. So that way I'm not going, hey, yeah, she told me that she hated you because you made her make her bed the other day. Yes, there's no reason for that. And so we do parent consults. We do the initial consult, and then every 5 sessions, we do a parent consultation. And that's a full 50-minute sit down session where we can go over everything. We hear what's going on for them, all of the things. And that's how we stay in touch. One thing that's probably a lot different for kids versus adults is we do a lot of communicating with people outside the sessions. Where maybe on the phone with teachers or, parents call because they're like, oh my gosh, this big thing just happened and I have to tell you. Um, and so there is a lot of communication in between parent consultations as well. But the parent consultations, like I said, are a really important part of retaining clients. Yes, also for the therapeutic process, and that is needed. But then at the same time, you don't want to forget and be like, oh, it's been a while. Um, we didn't. It's been 10 sessions instead of 5 because parents start to lose trust. They start to question, or they start to go, well, I don't even know what's happening. Like, we can just stop. All right. And so that's a really big part. Something else that we do here, which I learned this from my other mentor, Brenna Hicks, which has been amazing, is we do free parent consultations. So the initial intake and the consultations in between are free of charge to the parents. And that is something, when you look at marketing business wise, that we have found is really big because parents, for one, like nobody does that. And then parents are like, what? Like, you just tell me about my kid for free, right? And so that's a lot of, we're like, yeah, like, why, you don't want to have to pay to learn about your child. You're already paying all of this money for the child. And so that's been a big selling point too, that parents feel respected and really appreciated whenever they hear that.
Yeah, I'm around the financial side. I know you're private pay, and a lot of private pay practices right now are struggling, and you guys are hiring. What do you think you're doing different that is helping you grow a private pay practice?
Yeah, whenever I first started, I definitely did not know that it was that, like, as a whole, the private pay practices were going to start struggling, and all of these things, or that we're currently struggling so much. I think it's gotten worse, but this is all what I'm hearing from others because, like you said, somehow, knock on wood, like that is not us. Um, I think probably the biggest part is niching down. I cannot recommend niching down enough. Um, seeing children and doing play therapy is already like, luckily, I kind of just fell into the niche. I didn't have to think too hard about it. But having, like I said, this website, you get on it and it's like you see children, you only see children. This is what you love, right? Really on the website and marketing materials of pointing out the pain points, like all the things that you've talked about, to really hone in on that niche and show people like, yes, this is who we want to see. This is who's going to know the most about how to help my child. I think that's a huge part of it, because there can be other therapists. Like I know some places in the area that they're amazing therapists, right? But say, you know, all the people in the practice see somebody different, and there's a couple of play therapists, so their website is more generalist, right? We see all of these things. As a parent, if you think about like you're at the state where you're like, I need help with my child. My child is hurting, right? There's something going on that like my child needs. That's a mindset that, if you really dig into it, like you're scared, right? And so whenever you get on these websites and you see like, oh, like kids is one of the things they do, versus you get on a website and they're like, wow, like this is what they're dedicated to, that trust factor goes into it. It's like, okay, like, they seem like they know what they're doing, because parents are scared to trust just some random person with their child like that, especially when their child is going through something that could be really awful. And so, it's a sad thing. And I kind of think it's what has helped our business so much is that parents are going to be picky. Parents are going to be willing to go through a lot more and like do a lot more for the sake of their child than they are for themselves, which we don't promote. It's not healthy. They need to take care of themselves too, and we encourage that. But I think that's a big part of it. Is it really doesn't matter, you know, if you really needed help with something, you're feeling stressed, whatever, but say, you didn't want to spend the money on it, you just wouldn't spend the money on it. You're like, I'm not going to do that. Whenever it comes to your child, if you see your child hurting or, needing something, you're like, okay, I'll go work an extra job. Not that we want parents to have to do that, but they're much more apt to do anything that they can to help their children. And whenever they see how trained and specialized we are, they're like, okay, this is worth it because my child's going to feel better.
Yeah, I guess if you were working with a new, you're our go-to consultant for play therapists. If you were working with someone that was starting a play therapy business, okay, they're past getting the EIN, the LLC, PLLC, the licensure, they're past getting the bank account, those basics of setting up a practice. What would be the things, once they have the basic infrastructure set up, that you'd say, this is when it's worth doing consulting, and this is how, maybe even for you personally, working with someone that's ahead of you helped you speed up your progress?
Yeah. Um, from the beginning, and yes, there are the things that like you can definitely figure out, you know, by listening to these types of podcasts. There's ways that you can get the information. Um, I'm not sure how successful I would be right now, or like how far I would have gotten so far if I didn't start with like training and consulting from day one. I was in practice of the practice, which was huge on, all the bones of everything. And then I also had an amazing mentor, Brenna Hicks. She was my play therapy side mentor, and I did this like huge training with her on starting a play therapy practice. So shout out to her for a lot of the information I am giving today. Um, but I started that from the day I started. Yeah, literally like the same month I made my EIN and did everything. I started doing that and really learning. I think that you could get away with, not starting as quickly. But I do think it just takes a lot of like, you have to self-train, right? You have to like find the resources. But I would say that, the business is where it is today because I didn't wait, because reached out and found people that could help from the very start.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I think that, being around people that are ahead of you that have done it before can be so helpful, kind of in your own progress. Man, the last question I always have is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
This is a hard one. I've heard you say this for like what the last year and a half. And I have thought about it so much, and I always come up with 18 different things. I think the biggest one, as cheesy as this sounds, is follow your heart. And what I mean by that is it takes courage and passion, and you have to be scared at some point, and you're not going to get there without it. And so sometimes it's about taking that leap of faith. Yes, it needs to be kind of calculated, not just, you know, flying out of nowhere, calculated, like safe ish, right? Leap of faith, to get where you want to go. Because I was terrified doing all of this. I was scared. I felt like, how am I going to run a business? Right? Like, I've never done this before. But I believed in myself. I believed in, the people around me who supported me, and I got here. And so that would be the biggest piece of advice is if you want to do something, whether it's starting a private practice or starting a retreat or a course or whatever it is, like you're going to be nervous to some degree. You may be terrified, but if you trust yourself, like you can do it.
So good. Well, if you have a play therapy practice, if you're growing one, if you serve kids and want some specialty help, Brianna is taking new clients in her consulting over at practiceofthepractice.com/apply. I personally will meet with you for 30 minutes just to make sure that you're a fit and that kind of knowing exactly what you want to get out of consulting. And then once you're ready to go, we'll hand you off to Brianna and she'll get going with you. So excited to have people come your way to get help with their play therapy practices. Brianna, any other resources, tools, or ways to get a hold of you that you want to mention?
Yeah, if you want to check out what we do on our website, it's lilypad-counseling.com. And then, yes, if anybody ever has any questions or is curious about this process, I would love for you to reach out. You can do that at brianna@lilypad-counseling.com in my email.
So great. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Thank you.
I love that what she said about specialty, that just seeing kids, just seeing play therapy, that's a specialty, but even digging in more than that, and that, people want to help their children. They want to help them succeed. I think about, when one of my daughters was having some struggles with reading, I got her, daily 1 hour tutoring, and it cost a lot of money, but now she loves reading. It took a while to get there, but she absolutely loves reading, and it's such a great investment. And so we're not doing that to just get parents to do it, but we're saying there's hurting parents out there that want to help their kids and they have the financial resources to be able to help them. So if you are wanting to grow your practice, again, head on over to practiceofthepractice.com/apply. That's where all of our consultants are listed. We have consultants that can help you with your TEDx talk. We've got consultants that can help you with your mega group practice. We have consultants that can help you with your podcast or starting a counseling practice. Also, we have our membership community, the Practice Academy, which is our group program over at practiceofthepractice.com/membership. So lots of ways to get involved and get help if you want it. Also, we couldn't do the show without our sponsors. Today's sponsor is Gusto. Honestly, let's think about what we want to do in business. We don't want to care about calculating tax withholdings. We don't want to be stressed out about payroll or benefits. As Brianna was starting her practice, as I'm starting Great Lakes Online Counseling, I don't want to worry about all that stuff that it takes. That's why I use Gusto. You can head on over to gusto.com/Joe and you'll get your first 3 months for free when you run your first payroll. Again, that's gusto.com/Joe. Thank you for letting me into your ears and in